Zalvara's breath hitched as the console blared a shrill proximity alert. Something had just emerged from warp. The cold glow of her ship's control panels painted her violet skin in flickering light as she stared at the radar. A single, massive vessel loomed in the void, drifting silently, its dark hull barely reflecting the dim glow of the distant star. Her pulse pounded in her ears. That ship shouldn't exist. Her fingers trembled over the controls as she expanded the scan. No known identifiers. No active transmissions. But the design, the angular hull, the reinforced plating, the archaic yet strangely intact structure, she had seen it before. Everyone had. It was a Terran warship. Zalvara's throat went dry. No, that's not possible. Commander, her second-in-command's voice was barely a whisper. The rest of the bridge crew had gone silent, their eyes glued to the radar screen. Humans were a myth, a cautionary tale told to young cadets about an ancient race that burned too brightly and vanished into the abyss. Their ruins still dotted forgotten worlds, their technology scavenged and studied for generations. But their ships were all gone. Their colonies were abandoned. Their people were extinct. Yet here it was, silent, waiting, watching. The ship drifted, as if it had just awakened after a long slumber. There were no life signs. No heat signatures. No distress beacons. Just an empty husk floating in the dark. Zalvara's fingers curled into a fist. If humans were gone, then who was flying that ship? She swallowed hard. There was only one way to find out. Prepare a boarding team. Zalvara's boots clinked against the boarding tube as she and her team approached the derelict ship. The artificial gravity aboard her own vessel tugged at her suit, but ahead lay only darkness, cold, silent, and untouched by time. The airlock was open, not forced, not damaged, simply waiting. As if the ship expected them. Her team exchanged uneasy glances. Weapons were drawn, but they all knew that if humans were truly aboard, their primitive pulse rifles would be useless. With a deep breath, she stepped inside. The corridor stretched before them, eerily pristine. No dust, no decay, just empty halls and control panels glowing with faint, steady light, as if the ship had never been abandoned at all. "This isn't normal," one of her officers muttered. "A ship this old should be." A sudden flicker. The lights shifted. Zalvara's breath caught. The ship was reacting to them. Then a whisper, soft, mechanical. The ship's systems were waking up. A door at the far end slid open with a slow, deliberate hiss. Beyond it, rows of stasis pods lined the walls, their glass fogged with age. Her heart pounded. Inside those pods, unmoving but unmistakable. Humans. And then one of them stirred. A pair of eyes opened. And a single word escaped cracked. Ancient lips. Finally, Zalvara stepped cautiously into the Terran warship, her breath shallow beneath her helmet. The moment her boots touched the metal floor, a shiver ran through her. The ship was too intact. No rust, no debris, just silent, waiting corridors bathed in the dim glow of emergency lights. Behind her, her team moved in formation, weapons raised. No one spoke. The air itself felt heavy, thick with something ancient. "This ship is alive," one of her officers murmured, their voice barely above a whisper. Zalvara agreed, but said nothing. The walls seemed to hum beneath her fingertips, as if sensing their presence. Every system they passed was still functional, untouched by time. Then a sound. A faint hiss, like a breath escaping from unseen lungs. Weapons snapped toward the noise, but the corridor remained empty. A moment later, the ship's lights flickered, not erratically, but deliberately, as if something was waking up. A door ahead slid open with an eerie slowness. Beyond it, rows of stasis pods lined the chamber, their glass fogged with time. Zalvara's pulse pounded. Were they empty? She wiped the frost from the nearest pod. Her blood ran cold. Inside lay a human intact. Alive. Then one of them moved. A pair of eyes opened. And a hoarse voice whispered a single word. Finally. Zalvara's breath hitched as the human inside the stasis pod stirred. His eyes, too sharp, too knowing, locked onto hers through the frost-covered glass. The ship had been silent, abandoned, and yet, they were here, alive. A deep mechanical hiss filled the air as the pod's seal broke. The frost cracked, melting away in rivulets as the ancient figure stepped forward, his movements slow but deliberate. The rest of the crew stood frozen, their weapons raised, but Zalvara knew it was pointless. The legend said that humans had once been unstoppable, a force that burned across the stars before vanishing without a trace. But they hadn't vanished. They had been waiting. The man took a slow breath, his voice raw from centuries of silence. How long? Zalvara swallowed hard. We thought you were extinct. A ghost of a smile crossed his lips. No. We simply left. His gaze swept over the crew. And now that you found us, I suppose it's time we returned. Zalvara's pulse pounded. Returned? The ship's lights flared to life. Across the chamber, more stasis pods unlocked. All around her, humanity was waking up. And the galaxy would never be the same. 1. The Return of Humanity. Zalvara watched in stunned silence as more stasis pods hissed open. One by one, humans emerged, blinking, stretching, returning. The first man she had seen stepped forward, his gaze sharp. How long has it been? 12,000 cycles, she answered, barely believing the words. He exhaled slowly. Good. Then it's time. Zalvara's blood ran cold. Time for what? His smile didn't reach his eyes. For humanity to reclaim what was ours. Behind him, the ship's dormant systems roared to life. Engines hummed. Weapons came online. Across the galaxy, sensors would be flashing with an impossible truth. The humans were back. And they hadn't forgotten. 2. A cosmic warning. The human man studied Zalvara carefully before shaking his head. You shouldn't have come here. Her stomach twisted. What do you mean? He gestured at the other stasis pods. We weren't hiding. We were sealed away. For a reason. A deep, mechanical groan echoed through the ship. The walls trembled. Something else was waking up. The man's voice was grim. You woke us up, but you woke them too. Suddenly, alarms blared across the ship. Shadows moved in the corridors. Something was coming. Something not human. Zalvara barely had time to process it before the man grabbed her arm. If you want to live, he said, run. 3. A trap. Zalvara stepped back as the humans emerged from their pods, stretching, adjusting to their surroundings. But something was off. The first man smirked, rolling his shoulders. Took you long enough. Zalvara frowned. You were waiting? Oh, not just waiting, he said, flexing his fingers. The ship's lights turned an eerie red. Sealed doors slammed shut behind them. Zalvara's heart pounded. This wasn't a lost ship. It wasn't an accident. It was a test. A trap waiting for whoever found them first. And they had taken the bait. The man's grin widened. Now, let's see if your kind is worthy of surviving.